Just wait, there are a few more people coming in. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to New Canaan Library, Conversations with Business Leaders. I'm Lisa Oldham. I'm the director here at the library, and this event every year is one of our really big, important events, and we usually, like today, get a full crowd even on a sunny, beautiful Sunday afternoon. I'm going to hand over in a moment to Hazel Hobbs, who's chairperson of the lecture committee. But before I do that, I ask everyone to please silence your cell phones. Be aware that the exits are both on this side and at the back, should there be an emergency. And one bit of lovely news, Bob Lord, today's speaker, has really very generously donated enough copies of his book that everyone can take one away. They are on the credenza at the back of the room. And as you leave, you are welcome to take a copy with you. Without further, I would like to introduce Mrs. Hazel Hobbs, who has, for all these 8 years, coordinated and organized this event for the library. Hazel.
Thank you, Lisa. The Conversations with Business Leaders speaker program was inaugurated in 2009. Its purpose is to keep the community informed about the state of the economy and business, and speakers present their views on current and expected trends, concerns affecting the businesses they represent, while sharing their leadership, organizational, management experience, and expertise as gleaned over the course of their careers. The speakers selected to speak are accomplished business leaders who have a reputation for excellence. Topics cover the broad gamut of business leadership, issues including innovative thinking, organizational performance, and ethical decision-making. Our organizational committee includes our former speakers, and that list is in the program, and we're very proud of the speakers who have come here. They're extraordinary people. And it also includes, of course, our Lisa Oldham, our library director, Crystal Chumney, the manager of Library Adult Services, with assistance from Spencer Stewart and myself. Our speakers and the titles they held at the time they spoke, as I say, are listed in the program, and it is truly an extraordinary group, and their presentations were outstanding. When possible, it has been a tradition that the speaker from the former year introduces this year's speaker. Last year's speaker is a wonderful woman. Carol Loomis became a nationally known financial journalist while working at Fortune for 60 years. She wrote about highly complicated financial subjects as well as profiles of well-known business people. She has also edited on a pro bono basis Buffett's annual letter to Berkshire Hathaway shareholders for 38 years. Here to introduce this year's speaker is Carol Loomis.
Thank you very much. It's extremely nice to be back here again in this wonderful library. My son and his family live here and use the library, and it really is great. And as you've heard, it's customary for last year's speaker to introduce this year's speaker. So when I began to think how I would introduce this year's excellent choice for a speaker, Bob Lord, it occurred to me quickly that the two of us were on opposite ends of the employment spectrum. I, in my first job after college, was hired in the middle of the 20th century in 1951, and very soon after took my second job at Fortune magazine, and then stayed there in that one business spot for 60 years. Bob, graduating from college 34 years after I did in 1985, His school was Syracuse University, and his degree was in industrial engineering. First looked like he was going to have a predictable career. He took a job at Corning Glass Works and then got his MBA at Harvard Business School. But then he leaped into a dizzying array of jobs. He was in management consulting, and then healthcare, and then suddenly, during the internet bubble, into the digital world with an executive vice president's job at Razorfish, of which I had not heard very much, a professional services company focused on helping its clients transform their thinking and operations to deal with a digital world. Razorfish was at one time, about a decade ago, owned by Microsoft, and later by the advertising giant Publicis. And during his 13 Razorfish years, rose from one job after another to be global CEO. Then in 2013, he moved to AOL and soon became its president, the number 2 man. Finally, in the job that brought him here as a speaker, he was personally hired this year by IBM CEO Ginny Rometty to be that company's chief digital officer. And in that post, a point indicating how important the job is, he reports directly to her. And I know we all look forward to learning more about what that job entails. When I talked to the Bob on the phone a few weeks ago and referred to how many different jobs he has had, he said with great cheer and satisfaction in his voice, "Yes, that's true." And that's what I tell young people. Build your resume. So with that thought, I'm honored to introduce a walking, talking exemplar of that philosophy, Bob Lord, the brand new chief, 3 months, isn't it? The brand new chief digital officer of IBM. Bob.
So welcome, everyone. Before I get into my talk, I just do want to recognize sort of the tragedy that happened in Orlando and appreciate everyone showing up, given sort of we have these crises in our country, which are sort of very sad, and hopefully we'll learn from them and do something better about it. So today, I hope my talk will get us out of that element and maybe have us think about something a little fun, a little exciting. There's a reinvention happening in the world right now. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about myself, my career, very short time talking about that. I want to highlight a bit of what my co-author and I wrote in my book called Converge, Transforming Business at the Intersection of Marketing and Technology, and some of the principles about that. And then I want to talk to you about my current post at IBM and the fun I've been having in the last 8 weeks, but the enormous challenge that we have as a company to go forward. So, hi, I'm Bob. This world right now, you can really find out a lot about me without me even being here on stage. The first thing you would probably do is just go to Google search and search my name. And probably what you find out from my Facebook page is that I have 3 fantastic children. I live here in Canaan with my wife, that I have a second house in Nantucket, and that I love water sports. But then also you probably can go to my Twitter feed. You can find most recently that I just accepted a job at IBM. And Ginny Rometty here on the post that I just put for her a couple of days ago about focusing on cognitive and AI series and Watson. Start to understand a little bit now about sort of what my interest levels are. But actually, you then can go to LinkedIn. And actually, this is probably the most powerful page that's out there right now when you start thinking about networking. Years and years ago, there was no LinkedIn. So how did you get a friend? How did you actually network with someone? How did you find something out about another company? Well, now within LinkedIn, what you can do is you can actually search my name, and you can actually find people who I'm associated with. You can send me an email on LinkedIn, and you can ask for an introduction. Okay? Never before did you have that mining capability to actually figure out how am I connected and how potentially I can help you out. This has become a central piece of sort of finding and conducting business deals. And if you're not using LinkedIn, just to virally understand who your customers are, who your partners want to be, or who you want to go after, it's a big miss in the industry right now for yourself. Then lastly, you can go to my Wikipedia page, which is a bit thin compared to most others, but that's a page where you have basically lots of people collaborating about your background, right? So you really can't tell a lie there, right? I can't say that I was an industrial engineer at Syracuse University, right? My friend who I went to Syracuse with could actually correct it, okay? So the idea that you have this social commerce, you have this social communication vehicle called Wikipedia is actually really going to take hold, I believe, in the next 5 years. So that people are going to be less likely to be able to collaborate just among themselves or with an individual with only two people. It's actually the world is going to start collaborating. And if you think about your kids love to share information. So I believe the concept of Wikipedia is really going to take another sort of exponential growth rate going into the next 5 years as far as a tool of understanding business. Okay, and then you can look at the boring stuff. You can sort of say Bob was an engineer. He worked at Razorfish, ran a digital consulting agency there. We sold that company to Microsoft, which was probably the best pleasure I ever had. It was just when the world was starting to blow up and we were this big in Microsoft's profit line, so they just told me not to lose any money. So we kind of hid there for a little while. And then we sold to one of the largest agency holding companies called Publicis. And that brought me into a world where I was running 8,000 people in 28 countries. And what I realized was that I was on a plane a lot, not really having a very big impact around life. And I realized that my core roots of being a technologist, I wasn't really living up to what my aspiration was when I was thinking about when I was in school. So what I really thought about was pivoting my career after 4.5 years and figure out how can technology actually enable the world in a very different way. What I learned there, and we wrote this Converge book, which is Transforming Business at the Intersection of Marketing and Technology, was that technology was really the disruptor, and consumers were a disruptor, and that marketing had to catch up. So what I did was I actually moved over to AOL, and I helped AOL reposition themselves in the marketplace. And what we did at AOL was we actually made AOL a powerhouse. Okay? Most people here in the room would think of AOL as AOL Mail, right? You knew AOL Mail, it's dead, no one's using it anymore. Why did you go to that company? Well, lots of folks don't know that AOL owns the Huffington Post, owns TechCrunch, and a lot of great media properties. Okay? What I did when I went into AOL was I helped them develop a technology platform, and within 1.5 years, we were competing against Google, Adobe, and Facebook. Very, very proud of that. Through that journey, however, though, Verizon was my #1 client. They were the client that I used to test my technology. And lo and behold, Verizon bought AOL. The good news about that happened last June. It really gave me another pivot in my life to say, what do I want to do? And the interesting thing that I realized as I went through my career, when I ever talked about Razorfish and what I did at Razorfish or what I was doing at Microsoft, or actually what I did at Publicis, being an engineer running the largest digital agencies from a marketing perspective sort of like was something I never thought I would be doing. I really realized what I was helpful and what my core strength was to help companies transform themselves from the inside out. So when Ginny called me about IBM, I have to say, it was the furthest thing from my mind. I expected to go and run a startup. I expected to go and be a public CEO. That was sort of my next place. And I met Ginny, and I have to tell you, I was completely blown away by my first meeting with Ginny. Here's a woman who's been at the helm of IBM for the last 4 years, and she knows she needs to transform IBM into a modern age Google. Google is her biggest competitor right now. Amazon Web Services is her biggest competitor. And the interesting thing at IBM, for those of you who are old retirees there, you know a majority of the revenue and profit for IBM come from the top 1,000 clients. They come from the JP Morgan Chases, the Pfizers, all major companies, right? They go in, they sell to a CTO, they wrap great services around it, they build custom system developments, and they do a great job. And there's a lot of money in that. But the reality is they weren't serving the new economy. They weren't serving the new Facebooks, the Ubers, the Airbnbs, the Snapchats. Okay? Those are the new economy. That's the new economy we need to go after. And quite honestly, there's $260 billion. $260 billion of revenue that IBM doesn't even touch in that. So my job as I come into IBM as the new and the only chief digital officer is to go after that $260 billion and capture a share of that. And that's a bit of an uphill battle when you're used to developing custom system applications. And this area wants to buy information technology online. They basically want to pull out their credit card, they want to swipe a credit card, and they want to buy cloud-based services. They want to buy security services. They want to buy it on a credit card. And oh, by the way, the CTO, the chief technology officer in these companies, always doesn't make the decision. It's the brand new developer that just came out of college, or maybe even just came out of high school, and decides that they want to code something, and they want to create an application, and they want to actually put it out on the web, and they want to make money. How do you get at the hearts and minds of those people when you're IBM? They don't even know what IBM is, to tell you the truth. Okay, so first let me start with the challenge of reinvention. And I'm going to do it in the context of the book just because I think there's a couple of themes there that comes up over and over again. So transforming business at the intersection of marketing and technology. The great news is convergence of technology, media, and creativity. Okay? The idea is that technology, media buying, and creativity, the merging of these things together, creates such a great opportunity for businesses to reinvent themselves. Okay? And if you look through life, there's a few that you won't even know it's happened over time. Okay? If you look at Nike, you don't think of Nike as a sneaker company. You think of Nike as a healthcare company, someone who's concerned about your health, making you feel better. And oh, by the way, they just happen to sell sneakers. The reason why you think about that is because when they put their marketing strategies together, what they did was they surrounded you with technology and information around healthcare. They sort of wrapped it around the sneaker just being one vehicle of it all. It's more than creativity. So you used to have your old executive creative directors who had the best idea and no one else had. It's more than just technology, and it's more than just media and data. Okay? It's about experience. It's basically taking those three disciplines, merging them together, and creating brand new client experiences that have never been thought about before. If you think about having a product, you're taking your product and you're making it into a service. And you're enabling that product with technology services to make it an experience for that customer like no one has ever seen before. And I'm going to show you two examples as we go through this. If you think about technology, at its core, technology offers a palette that has never been there before for business owners. Never before can a CMO, a chief marketing officer, decide that they want to launch their own website. Okay? Years ago, what they needed to do is they needed to call up their CTO and say, hey, I need a couple of servers. Could you fire them up right now? The CTO would say, well, it'll probably take me about 6 months to do that. And oh, by the way, I need to get the creative department involved so I can actually paint the right colors so that my website comes up right. Not anymore. Now all the CMO needs to do is call a cloud-based company. They'll spin up servers for them, give them capacity, computing capacity, instantaneously. They can actually use somebody in their own creative department to actually outline a web code in something called HTML5, and they've just launched a website. The speed that you can do that is just phenomenal. Okay, so now you can really trump the competition in ways that you've never been able to do before. And media allows for a conversation. We finally, as consumers, have a voice. Okay? There's no more Marlboro Man. We can talk back to the Marlboro Man. He can tell us smoking is good, but it's not good for us. We get online and we say, it's not good for us. We don't like this. We can create movements around our conversations like never before, and you see it over and over again. Whether it's the uprising in Egypt, you can go on and on with just different examples about things that have just happened over and over again, because social allows for a media conversation. And as a business, that's very frightening. That's a very frightening place to be, because you don't know how to control the message anymore. Actually, you can't control the message anymore. And creativity can come and does come from anywhere. Anywhere. This is not limited now to the creative department. And I would suggest to you that technologists, because they understand what Google Maps can do or Google Mashup can do, or they understand how to connect two technologies together, or actually sometimes come up with the best creative ideas over and above the creative director. And oh, by the way, if the creative director thinks that their campaign is going to be the best, well, you know what? We'll use technology to optimize it to see whether or not it works or not. Because if somebody doesn't interact with it, is it actually working for you or not? So this idea that we use technology to help our businesses out is something that today's modern business has to accept. So technology, media, and creativity, it all has to operate within business strategy and insight. So the reality is the CMO, the CTO, and the CTO together need to figure out architect what your business strategy is. And as I get into IBM, that's where we're headed. Let me show you one example here. This is tried and true. This is an old example, but I think it'll be extremely relevant to the group. But I remember growing up, and my mom, every January, would take the Special K challenge. That meant my dad and I only ate cereal for the next 2 weeks, because we all had to lose weight, okay? What we did with Special K, we actually wrapped it around with a whole bunch of services, and I'll just play the video.
Weight management is a difficult and often lonely journey. For decades, the Special K 2-week challenge has helped millions of women lose weight. It also sold a lot of product, but that's where the relationship started to fade. So Special K reached out to women and learned that we couldn't get the relationship we wanted without giving them what they truly needed: long-term plans. So that's what we did. Introducing My Special K, a flexible new platform built around her, considering how she feels and how she lives. Instead of focusing on the struggle, My Special K focuses on the positive gains that come from feeling and looking her best. She can customize her experience based on her needs, with ongoing goal-based plans, nutritionist-created recipes, helpful shopping lists, and progress journals. And no matter where she is, she can access My Special K to help her stay on track. The expanded community offers even more ways to engage. She can get encouragement from others who relate and access more relevant brand content, like Tracy's Journey, a web series following a real woman through the challenge. To encourage signups, TV spots and in-store displays encouraged women to think beyond losing pounds to those positive gains that come from success. And targeted digital media spoke to feelings about weight loss during the resolution season. The results have far exceeded last year's performance. For the first time ever, half of our users are opting for longer-term plans. And the longer a woman engages with a plan, the more she'll spend on Special K products. And this is just the beginning. The global community will keep evolving, just like the women it supports. With My Special K, women are finding out what they have to gain when they lose.
So the great thing about that was 2 years ago. You go down the shopping aisle now, what do you see? It's Special K everything, right? Because what happened was this community came together and started to give Kellogg's information about what are the products they needed to stay healthy. So now we have snack bars, we have chips, we have everything. So the ecosystem has gone from that 2-week TV campaign to a long-standing lifestyle. So what did? We took a product and we wrapped Weight Watchers around it. We gave a service layer around it, which now gave the product a whole new view that no one ever thought of for Special K before. Okay, now this one is talking about the diversity you need to bring together about getting campaigns done. This is for Smart Car.
When you're the smallest car in America, people talk a lot of shit about you on Twitter. So how do you change that? You fight their shit talking with some of your own. We started responding to some of the haters and found one who took a shot at Smart's perceived lack of toughness. But what many don't know is that Smart's unique Tritium safety cell can withstand 9,000 pounds. So we did the math. We found that pigeons produce 25 pounds of poop per year, which means divide 25 pounds by 365 days and you get 0.068 pounds per day, divided by approximately 37.5 poops per day, and the mass of a single pigeon poop comes to 0.002 pounds. So take the 9,000 pounds of force divided by the mass of a single pigeon poop, and you'd need the waste of 4.5 million pigeons to waste a Smart. But what about the bigger birds? The numbers on turkeys and emus weren't as easy to find, so we called some friendly farmers and got the stats right from the source. We put it all together and sent our reply. Then the shit hit the fan. Our jokester blogged about it. His post got picked up by Reddit, where it hit the #1 position twice. The next morning, it was making headlines around the world.
Hey, makers of the Smart Car are winning a Twitter war, and they're using toilet humor to do so.
In less than 3 days, we generated over 22 million impressions, increased our Twitter mentions by over 2,000%, And as searches for tritium safety cells spiked over 300%, the world discovered the truth about Smart's safety. Now, Smart's unique attitude is changing the minds of more and more critics while setting the new standard for how brands should interact in social. Best of all, we're turning the shit-talking into respect.
So kind of a fun example, right? Don't be afraid of sort of these doubters. Figure out in your brand strategy how you're going to react to that. And the great thing about that is we had a team of people, technologists, mathematicians, creative folks, user experience design. And when that tweet came out, it was the mathematician that came forward and said, well, this is cool, but let's figure this out. And he did figure it out, and that actually led to the whole campaign. So this idea of diversity in teams is really, really important, instead of just leaving it in one silo as you go forward. So I'm going to shift. I'm going to talk about my first 60 days at IBM and give you a little bit of perspective about where we're going and where we're headed. And I just want to give you an intro of the tone that I have sort of taken on at IBM. Listen to this. So let me just make sure it's played loudly. So that's the new IBM. When I talk to my father, he's like, "What are you doing?" Listen. I think we have over 300,000 person organization that we're trying to change, right? So we have to create a movement within the organization for everyone to believe that we're moving and we're doing something very different. We also have a revenue model and a profit model that is based on the old, right? But if we don't move our current clients into the new, we're going to lose that business also. So we sort of have to get at the emotional cord of the employee to really understand that we're moving differently, because you want everyone talking about the new IBM and where we're heading, given the fact that we have the anchor of the old IBM to stay with us. So it's a really big challenge. So when Jimmy gave me the IBM Business Digital Group, this is a small business for IBM. It's only $15 billion. So sort of the enormity of the numbers, just sort of say to yourself, how do you go about this? I mean, yes, I've been in my journeys before to move companies and help Delta Airlines and others sort of transform their business. But at this scale, you really have to start thinking, step back and think, how are you going to approach this? Because the one person can't do it. You've got to get armies and groups of people and teams of people to really behave differently than they ever have before. And when you really go back and you actually look through what is the most important thing, what I find is that you really need to start with something about your winning aspiration. And what are we aspiring to do? What are we all about? What are we going to be yelling through the hallways that we do? And it's the first pillar of any kind of transformation or change management. If we all don't feel like we're doing something and doing something very different, then we're all going to lose. So very quickly into my journey, probably week 3, I got my team together. We brainstormed, what do we want to do? What is the winning aspiration of the IBM digital groups? And I would tell you, only as of last week, this is what we came up with. It's powerful. I think it's very simple. And it's called, it says, Unleash IBM to Empower the World. Simple, right? What are we doing? We're not coming into work every day, sitting in our cubicles doing spreadsheets. By the way, we're going to get rid of all the cubicles. We're not coming in worrying about my BAM level, the level that I have with an IBM. Okay, that doesn't matter. If you don't have the capabilities, then you don't have a job here. I mean, we're here to do work. And what we're here to do is we're here to unleash IBM. Unleash the power, the products, the services, everything that we have at IBM to empower the world. That doesn't mean just the CTOs of Citigroup anymore. Okay, that means the world. That means developers. That means startups. That means everyone that's there, because the tools and capabilities we have can empower the world in a very unique and interesting way. And oh, by the way, I just showed you all those examples that we're doing it already. We're just not talking about it in a way that makes lots of sense. Okay, so once we understand what our winning aspiration is, we have to start thinking about where do we play and what are our 4 strategic pillars. And these are very simple strategic pillars, and I will talk about these, I will tell you, for the next 18 months. Nothing will change in my talk. As I go around and talk to customers and I'll go and talk to employees, I will talk about our winning aspiration, I'll talk about our 4 pillars. The 4 pillars is all about our offering. What are we offering to the world? The second pillar is around experience. The customer comes first. If you've ever tried to do anything with IBM, it is the most complicated thing in the world. From the outside looking in, it was complicated. Now that I'm inside, it's twice as complicated. It is just crazy that everyone has forgotten who the customer is. And you're handed off from silo to silo to silo, and we're not going to win that way. Our competition, small little startup companies, you can just call them up and they get your service right away, whatever that service may be. So the customer experience is our North Star. The third area, as I mentioned before, are these developers, these influencer groups. They're not necessarily the buyers, but they're the people that advocate for IBM products and services. So if you are a CEO, who's the first person you're going to go to when you're trying to make a technology decision? You're going to go to your developers. You're going to turn around, you're going to look at your developers, and you're going to say, hey, what do you think about IBM? They're going to say, who? So we got to get to those people so that they say, yeah, you know what? IBM does have a set of capabilities that we should consider versus everyone else, and right now they're not doing that. So getting at the developer is really, really important. Next week I'm actually in India to kick off our first, I will say, developer conference worldwide, which I'm really, really excited about to sort of get their hearts and minds. And then the last is talent. It is just sort of unbelievable to me, for as large as IBM is and all the talent scale that they have, that we sort of missed the mark on having the right talent in a lot of cases. And this is my philosophy on talent, is show me, don't tell me. So if you're so great and you've had a huge impact on IBM, show me what you've done. Show me what you've developed. Show me the customers you have. And as new people come in, the new generation, I don't want to see a resume. I want to see what you've developed. I want to see that you bought Google AdWords. I want to see that you're operating in the modern world, not just on paper, on a resume. It doesn't matter to me anymore. So talent is another really big pillar for us to go forward. And these are, as I've been going out on IBM, talking about the leadership traits that I think all my management team has to have. I'm being very explicit with folks, what my expectations are. And there are 10. The first one is you need to set a winning aspiration. Just like I did, I have one. That doesn't mean that it works for your specific department, but you should actually set that out. And somehow it has to have unleash and empower in its statement. You got to be brave. Okay? I hear a lot of people at IBM being defensive. Oh, this competitor did this. Oh, this competitor did this. I don't care. We're going to win. Okay? If we're going to win, we have to attack. We have to be brave. And we have to operate from the core that we are good and that we are able to handle a startup and help them out. Communicate, communicate, communicate. I can't say it over enough to everybody. So the consistency in the message is going to be very, very important for the next year to year and a half. Yes, we'll pivot the message slightly and we'll move it slightly another direction. But if we change our pillars or we change our winning aspiration, we're going to set the whole organization in an uproar and go differently. You got to pick your punches, okay? There's so many priorities at IBM. We have to pick the top 5 things that are going to have the biggest impact. I want to know what those top 5 things are for my employees. We're going to line them up, we're going to stack them, and then we're going to get down to 3. And those are the 3 that we're going to execute, and we're going to have a pilot launched in September. Okay? If all of us were here, and we only just started a company, and we had to compete against IBM, what we could do is we could take IBM's ideas and execute them faster than IBM. So the sense of speed and urgency is really, really important for me to be able to get through the culture. Your customer's the North Star. As I said before, the experience itself is the North Star. So anything that we have, any silo, any organizational barrier, we should be able to knock down if we keep the customer as the North Star. You got to reflect. Take a day to just think. Find lots of people running around. Running around, running around, running around. What are you doing? Running around, running around. I mean, it's crazy. They can't even tell me what they're doing. Play chess, not checkers. This has to do really a lot with understanding where the puck is going to go versus where the puck has been. And we are not playing chess. The interesting thing for me is it's actually a 4-dimensional chess game right now. Because what's happened in the world is you've got Google getting into the media world. You've got technology companies that are doing marketing. You've got ad agencies that are actually doing technology. So the dimensions of the industry have changed in sort of a 3-dimensional way. And you really need to think about that. So when I say playing chess versus checkers, you got to pick your partners really, really well. You got to see who we're going to align with and who are we going to win with. And really commit to those partnerships. So normally in business, you sort of make lots of hay about partnerships, but they become passive. They're not really active partnerships. And I think the thing I learned at AOL was probably the 2 things that we did there that I was really most proud of was our partnership with Microsoft and our partnership with NBC. And the interesting thing for NBC, big TV company, to say that AOL was their digital partner made such hay within the industry. And you know what? Linda Yaccarino and I executed on the thing. And we went to clients together, we sold them business together, and we made it simple for them. Never before had a TV company and a digital agency, media company gone together on behalf of the client and made their business better. Those are the kind of partnerships that you really want to go after and play chess that way. I always tell everyone, please don't waste your career. If you're sitting there just doing Excel spreadsheets and you don't feel like you're going anywhere, then get out. You're not helping me anyhow. Just sort of reflect on your career. Is this where you want to go? Do you want to help me create the new IBM or not? If you don't want to help me create the new IBM or not, the door's right there and you should go. And I don't mean that in a very cold, hard way, but we don't have time to waste. Or else we're all going to be out of business with that. Always learn. That's sort of the same thing around your career. If you're not learning in the spot that you're in, or you always think you're an expert, then there's something wrong, because quite honestly, the kids that I learned from are the new kids that have come in from college that are really telling me about what the new applications are or what they've developed online. And then the last is to have fun. It's 1/3 of our life. We should have fun, okay? We're in a war. I get it. We're in a war, but God, let's make it fun. Like, let's poke at the bears that are there, right? And have a lot of fun with it all. So there's really setting expectations. There's really 3. That's a long list. So when I leave sort of the crowd, these are the 3 words that I leave on, and these are the expectations that I have of everybody right now in my digital business unit, which is about, I think it's about 8,000 people. First one is simplify. Simplicity. Everything we do has got to be simple. Got to break down the silos, and it's got to be simple. The second is speed. I talked a lot about speed. IBM has great ideas, but there's lots of imitators around there. And then the last one is self-confidence. And have self-confidence in where we're going and what we're about. So I'm really, really focused right now with my organization about telling me what we need to do in these categories. How do we simplify? What do we need to get better speed? And what do we need to do to get our self-confidence up? Because I don't want to hear the how. I don't want to hear what happened 10 years ago. It's not helping me. Because the whole world has changed. Now, you can view that as a huge opportunity because there's white space out there. And quite honestly, we could outmaneuver some of these competitors very quickly. Or you can see it as we're dead. I choose to obviously see the former. Okay, so that's my formal comments. Ran through that pretty quickly. Does anyone have any questions? I know it's supposed to be conversation, so Lisa.
In the green shirt? Is this the discussion you have with clients?
It will be. It will be. Yeah, it hasn't
You're very open about IBM's weaknesses.
Yeah.
To clients.
Listen, I think clients know that IBM has weaknesses. So to sort of hide behind that everything's great, doesn't necessarily work. I think open transparency is the way that we're going to win. Any sort of open ecosystem always seems to win. Closed ecosystems always seem to fail in history. And I think transparency about how we're trying to do better is probably what clients want to hear. Jenny actually made an interesting comment, because she's obviously been at these clients a lot longer than I have. And she said, our clients want us to win. Right? They're looking for reasons why IBM should win. It reminded me a lot of when Ford and General Motors asked the US government for money during that whole bankruptcy period. I don't know how many years ago it was. But I think the whole country wanted Ford and General Motors to win. Right? We didn't want them to lose. So I think we have that political capital at IBM. That if we go in and we talk to the clients about where we're going and what we're doing, and what our weaknesses are, and how we're trying to get to the new IBM, and where we are getting to the new IBM, because there are great examples. I mean, Watson is a phenomenal artificial intelligence tool. The weather company data is just rich with data for targeting to go after the new customer. So I think it's really how you position it all. Yes?
With all the disruption that's taking place in business that you just described, is there someone out there that has kind of been, an older company who has made that pivot and has been able to successfully kind of launch that you're bullish on, or that you like, or that you would look at as a good model?
Yeah, no, actually Delta Airlines is one I use a lot. And I think actually when you think about the merger that Delta went through with Northwest, they did it very early on. They heavily went into digital and technology. And their whole mantra, their sort of winning aspiration, was give red coat service, which was first-class service, to the masses, to give it to coach. So then that started their whole journey of how do I actually figure out, how do I get red coat service to the masses? And they enabled it through technology, right? So now you get a boarding pass, and you wouldn't even think twice about it. But that was probably 5-6 years ago. No one was doing that. And I remember getting the spot where they were up there with the Apple iPhone, and there was a boarding pass on, there was a Delta boarding pass. That was like a major moment there, because United had just bought Continental, or Continental just bought United, and they were just starting to figure out how to get their systems together. So Delta is probably a very good example. I mean, but we should really be looking at the new economy, right? Look at these new economy models, and Uber and Airbnb come up over and over again. They have disrupted industry overnight, whether it's the hotel industry with Airbnb or the taxi delivery service companies, and they've done it through basic technology and platform. They really have to do it any other way. So the hope here is, as we look at the new IBM, what is that new sort of set of technologies that allows us to get into the industry and disrupt the industry in a very different way than people are looking at it right now.
Thanks.
Yes?
You talked about, I think, nurture talent is one of the core pillars of your
Yeah.
strategy. Can you talk a little bit about your human resources team, how often you meet with them, and what the reward model is for resource training?
Yeah, so I haven't gotten there yet, but it needs to. So look, the human resource area within IBM is outstanding. I mean, I've never been in an ecosystem, and normally I would complain in my old jobs that, I didn't have enough HR support, We've got such systems, rankings, evaluations of people, I could dig down on anyone, find out their career for the last 15 years, where they've been, what they've done. The information on each individual is just outstanding. The problem with the system is the reward system, okay? Because what's happened, I think, in very large corporations is people tend to move from job to job. So if they don't like the job that they're in, or they haven't hit the particular objectives that they hit, there is an HR ripcord to say, shit, I'm not doing well, boop, I should get out of here, and they'll go to another job. So you never actually really hold anyone accountable, which is a problem, right? If I have salespeople, they should be on their sales quota. And oh, by the way, when you make sales quota, I'm going to pay you. Not you're on a territory quota. Never heard of that before. It means if the region makes it, you make it. So there's a lot of, sometimes there's just disincentives that aren't necessarily there. But yeah, no, I'm meeting with the HR people like every other day right now. And I think it is a challenge, as I come in from smaller organizations, I need to learn what are the bigger implications in a large organization like this, but HR should enable our business, not necessarily just slow it down, and that's where we're kind of heading.
Follow up, I know IBM acquired Connect, so
Yep.
is the Connect technology?
Yeah, starting to,
that?
but it's not universally connected, no pun intended, yet in the organization. And the other question is that the right tool, or should we be using something like LinkedIn that's a more modern tool for the modern world? And I think there's also this mindset, oh my God, we bought a tool, then we have to use it ourselves. And sometimes that may not be the best tool to use for the business that we have. Yes, sir.
Yes, and IBM, one of the, sometimes I've heard it's like trying to kick an elephant to stimulate change. Coming in with a new concept like you're doing, what type of cultural barriers are you running into and how are you overcoming them?
Yeah, so the good news is I report to Ginny. And I don't think I would have taken the job if I didn't report to her. And I own a P&L, which is also important. And my philosophy on this, and I sort of mentioned it briefly, is we have to take one bite of this big blue elephant at a time, right? And there are great things that are happening in the hardware side of the business with power, and there's great things happening on the software side, and I'm not touching those things, right? There are great relationships that are there in the consulting side. So I'm going after pilots that go after that $260 billion. So I'm going to fish where IBM's not fishing. Okay, we're going to prove our model where people aren't, the white space I keep calling to people. So I'm not necessarily coming across yet as a threat because I'm not really going after their business per se. But we're going to have to do business very differently in this world over here, not in the world that's there right now. So my approach to this is number one, Ginny's support, but number two, I'm in every executive team meeting now, which there's a lot of them. And I'm sort of biding my time here because we do a lot over and over again, and there's a lot of work to get done. So I'm trying to balance being in the old world and trying to innovate the new world at the same time. Yes.
I saw John Patrick years back when he introduced IBM's internet, say we have to create the alpha works, and so we had to go outside in order to create that developer community. I think I've seen that kind of come back in. My question is, when I put my marketing hat on, why new as opposed to upgrade or improved IBM? Sort of the new code. What's the thing back there? And just sort of a ping back is when I put my developer hat on. Recently, my firm went looking for new hosting providers, and we interviewed 30 people around the world, and I was surprised. I said, just try IBM. And when I saw SoftLayer, I was like, OMG. So kudos to whoever bought that and bought that under your fold. So back to how come new as opposed to different?
Yeah. So remember, this is geared towards employees, right? And I'm really trying to get them to think differently than than they haven't before. And I think it's really important that they know that when they should come in on Monday, they should think and behave very differently than they're currently thinking to get us into the new model, whatever that new ecosystem is. How we market it and how we sort of do it to the customers. There's actually a very strong argument that Ginny has laid the foundation for cognitive and cloud for the last 3 years, right? So really, and we are the cognitive cloud company led by Watson, right? Watson won Jeopardy how long ago? So we need to take that umbrella that she's put together and bridge over. But what you're going to start to see is developer, the branding for sort of those hosting providers are going to be very clearer. They're going to be tied to IBM because right now SoftLayer sits out where? How does anyone even know SoftLayer is connected to IBM? Nobody does, right? So we need to look at our branding, so we have branding hierarchy, so when someone uses a tool, they understand that it's IBM, or it's powered by Watson, or with Watson. And if you actually use the Under Armour application, and it's sort of like it ties to your Fitbit, it'll actually give you Watson recommendations for your health. So it's sort of, we're starting to get to that point where a little bit of the Intel Inside kind of idea, so that there's a halo that IBM, either through Watson or through cloud gets. Good question, though. Yes, sir.
So I'm in this space as well, technology, and we hear about big data, right?
Yeah.
Big data's all the rage. Really interesting article that I read about small data, the president of eBay, who actually talked about small data, about looking for particular elements. Digital stuff drives big data. It drives the acquisition of data and the use of it. How do you see people using that and really drilling down to find
that's a really broad question, but I will say is part of the reason why artificial intelligence and Watson is so popular right now is because what people are using Watson for is to go and give them probabilities of what is going to happen in the future. Okay, so people are using past data to predict what the future is through algorithms, through AI. So the great news is I think the tools are getting to the point where this volume of data is going to get to the point where you have probabilistic information that comes back from these AI tools. 90% of the time this will probably happen. 5% of the time this will happen. 5% of the time this will happen. So then you, as the intelligent human being, can figure out what to do with that information before. Because it's the only way we're actually going to look at data. My other perspective on data is after 6 hours, it's irrelevant. Okay? Because the cool thing about data, and what you can get right now, especially with our phones, is you know the context, you know the content, therefore I can connect with somebody. But the more you can get that real time, the better actually interaction you're going to have with the consumer than ever before. So if they're shopping in a Walmart, I want to know they're shopping in a, Procter & Gamble wants to know they're shopping in a Walmart right then and there. They want to know what aisle they're in and whether they're considering to buy detergent or not. At that moment in time, that is when you have the best chance of getting them to buy a Procter & Gamble product versus something else. And by the way, by you walking in Walmart, you've just given away all your rights to being marketed to. There's big signs that are on top of Walmart. And if you have the app, they can do that to you. Yeah. Yes, sir.
What were some of the key elements of Ginny's pitch to you that blew you away?
Yeah. I think it just started at the cognitive cloud area. And it was very much that she believes that IBM can impact the entire world. So yes, Amazon has this going on, and Microsoft has this going on, but they're sort of only key components. When you look at what IBM has and what IBM has done, the world reach that IBM has is pretty profound. So what really intrigued me was the platform for change, the platform for transformation. I've never had a platform this big to do transformation. I've had a platform in an ad agency. I've had a platform sort of in the programmatic technology world, the media buying world. But this gives me a platform across a whole industry, which is core to how we behave as human beings. And some of the great stuff that comes out of Watson just blows my mind away. And how do we get that to the next level is kind of pretty intriguing. There's actually a smart startup company, Alpha Modus, is that it? Yeah. He's speaking with me tomorrow, and what he's done is he's used Watson to actually find the financial services market, the true alpha. Okay? And what is that alpha for buying buying portfolios? Because the complicating world has gotten so complex that financial guys can't figure it out anymore because it's just way too much information, which I know myself. Yes, Julie.
So I think
remember, I'm your friend.
Make it a good question. You referenced your new hires being young and sort of this industry. What do you get from a person that's coming out of high school that attracts you to them, or even the new college graduate? What are they bringing to the table?
Yeah, look, I think they're digital natives. I mean, I think that the bottom line is the way that they behave and the way that they act are ways that we don't act and behave. I mean, we're still fighting it, right? We're still fighting the fact to put your phone not on your bedstand anymore and leave it downstairs, right? We're still fighting the fact that we want space. The reality is digital natives, they find their own space. And how you behave and how you use technology is very different. So to learn from them allows us, I think, to look to the future. If you look at China and you see the consumer behavior in China on a mobile device, that's the future. That's not the future that we live right now. We're horrified. Some people are horrified that Amazon knows when you're out of laundry detergent and sends you an email. Well, you know what? All they're doing is looking at predictive models. They're looking at past history. They're saying, oh, Julie uses so much detergent per day, per month, therefore she's going to run out such and such. Why don't I just help her and tell her that she needs, new detergent? People see that as creepy. I don't see that as creepy. I see that as, my God, you found out more information about it, you're helping me. I don't have to go to the grocery store anymore. It's just going to show up in my house in a drone, maybe in the future. Yes. Hey, Randy.
Considering the market that you're targeting is a holding market for all these legacy cultural
Yeah, well, so IBM has. IBM has bought many, many small little companies. SoftLayer was one of them to really help them sort of get there. The interesting thing is it hasn't had the impact that it needs to have as quickly as it has. So there's a couple of things that you can look at. Where did they put those acquisitions? Were they put under the old business, and the weight of that old business sort of crushed who they were and what they were about? Should they have separated them out? Did they actually motivate the entrepreneurs who came in a way to continue to do what they were doing, or did some of the policies that IBM had sort of get them to not behave the way that they were when they were a startup? So if you have a reputation, so if you think about Oracle does this very often. What Oracle does is they go in and they strip the new company. Before they buy the company, they strip it of every identity that it has, and it plugs into a very specific strategy. And they normally hold those, the owners, the entrepreneurs, accountable to product deliverables. So from the get-go, as soon as they buy that company knows where it's going, how it ties into the bigger strategy, and what their expectation is of what they need to develop on the product. And Oracle's done it many, many times. And Larry also get crucified all the time because he's ripping the core of this out. But the reality is it's worked, okay? And their products are very well integrated. And if you were an Oracle client, IBM's taken a different tack. So I'm not saying Oracle's is right, but I do think if we do another acquisition, it has to be a size and scale enough, and it has to be strategically integrated in a way that it has impact, and that you tie those entrepreneurs in, or else you're losing the essence of the company. Great. Thank you all.
I don't want to interrupt the applause because I think all of us are going out with a faster heartbeat, listening to the excitement of what's happening, or saying, golly, can I keep up with it? What can I do? I've got to read this book and everything else. So we're very, very grateful. This is a thank you from all of us for coming and speaking with us, and we appreciate it very much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you again, and thank you for the book that we can read.